It happens like clockwork every single afternoon. Somewhere around 3 o'clock, your focus starts slipping. Your eyelids feel heavier. Your brain, sharp and clear just an hour ago, suddenly feels like it is moving through fog. You reach for coffee, maybe something sweet from the vending machine, and you tell yourself the same thing you tell yourself every day: I just need a little pick-me-up. But here is exactly what this video is going to show you, and it is probably not what you expect. That crash is not random. It is not laziness, and it is not simply because you skipped a nap. It is your body sending you a very specific hormonal signal, one that most people misread completely and then make worse with the exact wrong response. If you have ever wondered why this crash hits at almost the same time every single day, like your body has an internal alarm clock working against you, stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you will understand precisely why this happens, and more importantly, you will know exactly what to do about it starting tomorrow afternoon. Here is where we begin. Most people assume this crash is simply about blood sugar dropping after lunch, and while that plays a small role, it is nowhere near the full story. The real driver behind your 3 o'clock crash is a hormone you already know well from other conversations about stress and fat storage: cortisol. Cortisol does not stay at one steady level throughout your day. It follows a very specific, predictable rhythm. It peaks shortly after you wake up, giving you that initial burst of morning alertness, and then it is supposed to decline gradually and smoothly throughout the day, reaching one of its lowest points precisely in the mid to late afternoon before beginning to rise slightly again in the evening. That dip, right around 3 o'clock, is completely normal. It is built into your biology. The problem is not that this dip happens. The problem is what most people accidentally do in response to it, and how that response quietly makes the entire situation significantly worse, not just for that afternoon, but for the rest of your evening and even into the following morning. Let us walk through exactly what happens inside your body when that natural cortisol dip hits, and why the way you respond in this exact moment determines whether you recover smoothly or spiral into a cycle that repeats every single day. When cortisol drops in the afternoon, your brain interprets this the same way it interprets any energy shortage. It sends out hunger and alertness signals, pushing you to seek out something that will restore that missing energy quickly. This is precisely the moment most people reach for coffee, and here is where the real problem begins. Caffeine does not actually restore your cortisol. Instead, it forces alertness through a completely different mechanism, blocking a molecule called adenosine that has been building up in your brain since morning. You feel sharper almost instantly, but underneath that artificial alertness, your cortisol is still sitting exactly where it was, low and unaddressed. Now add sugar into the mix, because most afternoon pick-me-ups do not stop at coffee alone. A cookie, a candy bar, a sugary drink alongside that coffee sends your blood sugar sharply upward. Your pancreas responds by releasing a wave of insulin to bring that sugar back down. And this is where things take a sharp turn for the worse. The combination of caffeine forcing alertness while insulin aggressively drops your blood sugar creates a second crash, often more severe than the first, arriving roughly 90 minutes to 2 hours later. This second crash hits you right as you are trying to finish your workday, or right as you get home and desperately want energy for your evening. Your body, now dealing with both a cortisol dip and a sharp insulin-driven blood sugar drop, releases even more cortisol in response. Except this time it is not the smooth, natural afternoon dip. It is a stress-driven spike, arriving at exactly the wrong time. Here is why this matters far beyond just feeling tired. This afternoon stress spike interferes directly with your evening cortisol decline, the natural drop your body needs heading into nighttime to prepare for quality sleep. When you spike cortisol artificially in the late afternoon through this caffeine and sugar cycle, that elevated cortisol often lingers into the evening, making it measurably harder to fall asleep and reducing the depth of the sleep you do get. And this is where the cycle becomes self-perpetuating. Poor sleep quality directly increases cortisol the following morning, along with intensified cravings and reduced insulin sensitivity the next day. Which means your 3 o'clock crash tomorrow arrives even harder than it did today, pushing you toward the exact same coffee and sugar response, deepening a cycle that can quietly run for months without you ever realizing the actual cause was never really about willpower or afternoon laziness at all. Now let us talk about what actually breaks this cycle. Because the fix here has almost nothing to do with drinking less coffee out of sheer discipline, and everything to do with giving your body what it genuinely needs during this specific afternoon window. The first shift is timing your lunch protein correctly. A lunch heavy in refined carbohydrates alone, a plain sandwich, pasta without much protein, sets you up for a sharper blood sugar dip several hours later, right around the same time your cortisol is naturally declining. Building your lunch around a solid protein source, along with fiber-rich vegetables, creates a much steadier release of energy that carries you more smoothly into the afternoon, working alongside your natural cortisol rhythm instead of adding a second layer of instability on top of it. The second shift, and this one surprises people the most, is movement instead of stimulation. When that afternoon dip hits, instead of reaching immediately for caffeine, try a short walk outside, even 5 to 10 minutes. This mirrors exactly the mechanism we discussed in earlier videos about morning cortisol and walking. Optic flow and light exposure both send a calming signal to your nervous system, gently supporting your cortisol rhythm rather than forcing artificial alertness through caffeine and sugar. If you do want coffee in the afternoon, and there is nothing wrong with enjoying it, the key change is separating it from sugar. Black coffee, or coffee with a small amount of protein like a splash of milk, does not create the same dangerous insulin spike that a sugary drink or pastry alongside it does. You still get the alertness benefit of caffeine without setting up that second, harder crash 90 minutes later. Hydration plays a bigger role here than most people expect as well. Mild dehydration alone can mimic many of the same symptoms as this cortisol dip: fatigue, difficulty concentrating, a general foggy feeling. A large glass of water in the early afternoon, before reaching for anything else, often resolves a meaningful portion of that crash entirely on its own. Give this combination, protein-focused lunch, a short walk instead of an immediate caffeine reach, and proper hydration, a real try for just 1 week, and pay close attention to how differently your afternoon feels by day 3 or 4. Your 3 o'clock crash was never a personal flaw. It was a normal, predictable dip that your body handles perfectly well on its own, until it gets hijacked by the exact response most people have been taught to reach for automatically. If this changed how you think about your afternoon routine, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Subscribe if you want more real science explained simply, no gimmicks, no shortcuts, just how your body actually works. And tell me in the comments, what time does your energy usually crash, and are you willing to try a walk instead of coffee tomorrow? I will see you in the next one.